If you've been on a run, walked through a city, or even just browsed for new sneakers lately, you've seen them. On. The shoes with those wild, cloud like soles, they are absolutely everywhere. But behind every single pair is this massive global company. Today, we're going to peel back the curtain by diving into their 2024 annual report to see what the company is really telling its investors. So let's crack it open and see what story the numbers tell. Right on the cover of the report, you get this: Dream On. It's aspirational, it's inspiring, it's the brand you see in the slick commercials and on superstar athletes. This is the story they want to tell the world. But, this document isn't just a pretty storybook. Because just a few pages in, bam, you hit this: the official filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. It's dense, it's packed with legalese, and it's where those inspiring slogans meet the cold, hard reality of being a publicly traded company. And the real story we're here to find? It lives right in the gap between these two slides. So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll look at the story of the company beyond its famous soul, we'll check out its global growth engine, learn how to read the super important risk factors section, get a quick financial snapshot, and finally, see what the report tells us about On's next big move. All right, so first things first. What is this document really? It's so easy to just dismiss an annual report as some boring thing for Wall Street, but it's so much more than that. Think of it as the official blueprint for the massive machine that gets those shoes from a designer's sketchpad all the way onto your feet. And that is the crucial point. This document is a map of where On wants to go, and, just as importantly, it's a legally required confession of everything they're afraid could go wrong along the way. Our goal in this explainer is basically to show you how to read that map. Okay, so now let's pop the hood and look at how this machine is fueled. Section 2, the global growth engine. This is where we look past all the hype and get into the numbers to understand exactly how On is growing so incredibly fast. Now, this is really interesting. On basically has this two-pronged attack. Almost 60% of their sales come from wholesale, selling through partners like Foot Locker or your local running shop. But over 40% comes from direct-to-consumer, or DTC. That's their own website and their own beautiful retail stores. This balance is just key. It gives them huge reach through partners while also letting them control the brand experience and, frankly, keep more of the profit through their own channels. It's a really smart setup. And this chart just brilliantly illustrates where that growth is coming from. Yeah, they're still growing like crazy in their home turf in the Americas and Europe. But just look at the Asia-Pacific region, an explosive 84.5% growth in 1 year. This shows their strategy of expanding geographically is paying off in a huge way, turning them from a European running brand into a true global powerhouse. Okay, now we get to the heart of the document. This is my favorite part of any annual report, the section called Risk Factors. This is where the company legally has to tell investors everything that could possibly derail their big plans. And learning to read it is like getting a backstage pass to the company's most secret strategy sessions. So what even is a risk factor? Well, put simply, it's the company's official worry list. They have to outline any potential issue that could seriously damage their business. Sure, it's written in this cautious legal language, but if you know what you're looking for, it is incredibly revealing. And what is On worried about? Well, a whole lot of it comes down to the brand itself. You can see their own stated risks right here. They worry about keeping that premium image, about fakes flooding the market, and this is the big one, about losing that cool factor that makes people want their shoes not just for running, but for everything. And that leads to this absolutely fascinating quote, pulled directly from the report. This right here, this is the central paradox of On's success. The company itself is admitting that the more popular and available they become, the less special they might seem. I mean, how do you become a global giant without losing the magic that made you a star in the first place? That is a massive, massive challenge. Of course, it's not just about brand image. The report also details all the hard, real-world challenges. Things like supply chain chaos, the ever-present threat of a major cybersecurity attack, and the fact that they rely on factories they don't even own.
These are the logistical nightmares that can grind that growth engine we just saw to a screeching halt.
And one last key risk to get your head around is their dual class structure. Now, don't let the name scare you. In simple terms, all this means is that even though you and I can go buy their stock, our shares have way less voting power than the shares held by the founders. So the bottom line is, the original visionaries who started the company, they still have the final say on its direction, keeping control even while using public money to grow. All right, we've talked strategy, we've talked risks. Now, let's follow the money. This is where we see if the story is actually backed up by the numbers. We're going to pull out 3 key figures from their financial statements that tell you most of what you need to know. First up, top-line growth. In a super competitive market, net sales still grew by an incredible 29.4% in 2024. This just shows that despite all those risks we just talked about, the demand for On's products is absolutely surging. That growth engine is running at full throttle. Second, their gross profit margin is over 60%. So what does that actually mean? It means for every dollar of shoes they sell, they get to keep about 60 cents before paying for things like marketing or R&D. That number is incredibly high, and it's a direct result of their premium brand. They can charge high prices, and people are more than willing to pay them. And finally, all that incredible sales growth and those high margins translate directly to the bottom line, a net income of over 242 million Swiss francs. This proves their model isn't just about growing for the sake of growing, it's a highly profitable business, which is exactly what investors want to see. So what's next? Well, the annual report also works as a roadmap for the future. By looking at where they're spending their money, we can get a really good idea of where this company is headed. The report points to 3 key areas. First, they're expanding beyond their running roots into new categories like tennis and training apparel. Second, they're investing a ton in new manufacturing tech, like something called LightSpray. And third, they're pouring money into massive new automated warehouses to handle their explosive scale. And this is where the report gets so interesting. It doesn't just mention a new innovation like LightSpray and move on. No, it details all the specific, really difficult hurdles. They have to perfect the process, they have to scale it up to millions of units, convince us to buy it, maintain quality, and manage the huge financial risks. It's just a brilliant reminder of how incredibly complex it is to bring a new idea to market at a global scale. And that brings us to the final question, doesn't it? The one that really ties this entire annual report together. It's the same tension we saw in that risk factor quote. On built its brands on being different, on being a premium, almost scarce alternative. Now it's chasing the giants like Nike and Adidas. Can it become a household name everywhere in the world without losing the very magic that made it special in the first place? The answer to that question is going to define the next chapter of the On story.